I've always known that the truth can be scarier than any fiction. People like to talk about ghosts, demons, shadows, and strange laboratories where creepy experiments are conducted. But these are fairy tales. The real horror is what people do. I want to tell you about what I saw myself, about what I've been through. And if you think you're ready, listen carefully. I've never been a superstitious person. I didn't need ghost stories to keep me awake at night. Working as a crime journalist, I saw so much horror that even the scariest fictions seemed like children's fairy tales to me. I'm used to blood, to pain, to the fact that people are capable of the wildest evil. I'm used to seeing corpses decomposing in the sun, children whose eyes stared into the void, women who were killed just because someone thought their voice was too loud. But I never thought that one day I would be on the wrong side of the investigation. It started with a strange case, the disappearance of the family. A man, a woman, and their 10-year-old son. All three of them just disappeared from their house. No signs of a struggle. Without a note. Their phones were found on the table, the food was left half-eaten, and the TV continued to work. It was like some kind of frightening time freeze. Everything in the house looked like they just got up and left. But there was one detail in this case that bothered me. There was a dirty glass of milk on the kitchen table. It's half empty. Someone held it in their hands, drank from it, and then put it back down. The milk started to sour, but no one took it away. I tried to imagine a scene. A family sitting at a table, talking, a child perhaps drinking milk, and then what? What could have happened to make them just disappear? I've been digging into this case for a long time. I was looking for witnesses. I was checking the surveillance footage. I even talked to their neighbors, but no one saw anything. The house was located on the outskirts of the city, next to a forest, and there were few cameras in that area. The only thing I could find out was that the neighbors heard some noises that night. It was like someone was whispering, a quiet, hollow voice, but it didn't make sense. I couldn't let go of the feeling that it was something more than just disappearing. I started digging deeper, looking through old cases, looking for similar cases. And that's when I found something. 10 years ago, a family had already disappeared in the same house. Husband, wife, and child. Exactly the same, without a trace. I found some old police reports. The house was searched inside and out, but nothing suspicious was found. No blood, no signs of struggle. It's like they just disappeared. But there was something strange in one of the reports. The policeman who handled the case left a phrase in his notes that made me feel a chill run down my spine. The house is too quiet. There's something wrong here. It feels like he's waiting. What the hell does that mean? A house is just a building. For walls, a roof. How can he wait for something? I decided to spend the night there. I needed to figure out what was going on. I brought my camera, laptop, and voice recorder with me. I've prepared everything properly to capture any movement, any sound. I wanted to find a rational explanation. Maybe the house has something to do with the crimes? Was there a hidden room that no one knew about? I didn't believe in the supernatural, but something in me said, this is not a common thing. When I entered the house, it was too quiet. So much so that I could hear my own stomach working. The old wooden floor creaked underfoot, and the air was musty, as if the windows hadn't been opened in years. I sat down at the kitchen table. I still have the same glass of milk in front of me. I knew it had been taken away as evidence, but someone had left exactly the same one. I shuddered. I turned on the camera, started talking into it, recording my feelings. There are no signs of forced entry in the house. It looks like the family just disappeared. I don't see anything strange, but it feels like something is wrong here. I ran my finger along the edge of the table. Dust. This house stood empty for several weeks, but it seemed like someone was here. I got up and walked through the rooms. A children's room with scattered toys. The parents' bedroom is a perfectly made bed. But when I got to the bathroom, I froze. The door was ajar, and I saw a mark on the mirror. Someone's palm print. I didn't remember seeing it before. I took a step forward. He turned on the light. My hands were shaking when I touched the mirror. The print looked fresh. I ran my finger over it and shuddered. It was sticky. Blood. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. I was here alone, or so it seemed to me. I recoiled from the mirror, feeling my heart thump against my rib cage. Damn, I checked this house. The bathroom door was closed, the mirrors were clean. But now, after a few minutes of my presence, a trace has appeared here. I slowly took out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The light trembled in my hands, but I forced myself to come closer. I put my hand next to this footprint. It was smaller than my hand. A child, perhaps? But whose is it? The missing boy? It was impossible. I took a deep breath and turned on the camera. There are footprints on the bathroom mirror that have not been here before. They look fresh, sticky. It might be blood, but I'm not sure. I'll have to check it out. I didn't want to touch them again. I shuddered at the thought of that stickiness remaining on my fingers. I took another picture and then returned to the kitchen. The house was empty, but now it seemed alien and hostile to me. I tried to put my thoughts together. It could have been anything. An old print that went unnoticed. Maybe someone broke into the house after the family disappeared? But why? I looked around the kitchen again. There were small crumbs on the floor by the refrigerator. It was like someone had recently eaten something. It was weird. When the police sealed the house, it had to remain untouched. I opened the refrigerator. There was almost nothing inside, a few moldy food containers, dried fruits, and a half-empty bottle of water. Everything looked as it should after weeks of neglect. But I saw a milk carton on the side shelf, almost full, and it hasn't expired yet. I closed the door and took a step back. Someone was here. I quickly went to the front door, checked the lock. It was in order. There were no signs of forced entry. I checked the windows. They were locked. So either someone broke in here earlier and lived in the house secretly, or no, I wasn't going to figure it out for reality. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I needed to go through the cameras that I had installed a few hours ago. Maybe I missed something while I was walking around the house. The first camera is in the living room. Everything is calm. The second one is in the kitchen. I'm on my own, moving around the room. The third is the nursery. I watched the minute hand on the clock move forward. Everything was quiet. And so, when I rewound the recording to the moment when I left the room, a shadow flashed in the camera lens. No, not a shadow. I pressed pause, rewound, and stared at the screen. There was something in the corner of the children's room, near the closet. I froze, feeling everything go cold inside. On the record, at the very moment when I was leaving the room, the closet door opened just a couple of millimeters. I wasn't breathing. I was there. I looked in all the corners, but I didn't check the closet. I slowly got up from my chair. The house was quiet, but now the silence seemed unbearable to me. I forced myself to take a few steps. He walked down the corridor. I reached the nursery. The light of the flashlight slid across the floor on the bed, on the shelves with toys. The cabinet was in the same position as before, but now I saw that the door was slightly wider open than it had been on the tape. I swallowed. I slowly reached for the handle. It felt like I was thrusting my hand into the mouth of an unknown beast that could close its jaws at any second. I jerked the door open. The closet was empty. Just an empty space with a couple of baby hangers and an old plaid. I exhaled, but the tension was still bubbling inside. I ran my hand along the back of the closet. Ordinary wood, but then my fingers came across something cold. I held the flashlight closer. Pin, and there's a little piece of paper attached to it. I carefully took it off. He unfolded it. Just one word. They're watching. I froze. I didn't know whose handwriting that word was written in. But I shuddered at the thought that I wasn't alone in this house, that I squeezed the piece of paper in my palm, feeling everything go cold inside. They're watching. Who are they? Was this someone's prank? The note looked old. The edges were yellowed, but the ink was clear. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress my panic. It could have been left by a child. Maybe the missing boy. Maybe it's just part of some child's play. But something told me it wasn't a game. I looked at the cabinet again, ran my hand along the back wall. It seemed dense, but I suddenly noticed that the wood was slightly different in color. I pressed my fingers to the edge, and the board shifted slightly inwards. I froze. A feeling of foreboding grew in my chest. With an effort, I pressed down on the wooden panel. It gave way like a hidden door, and small space opened up behind it. It was dusty and narrow, barely wider than my shoulder. The smell inside was musty, like in old basements where no one had been for years. I shone my flashlight inside. Space led somewhere further. It was bigger than I expected. It wasn't just a secret closet, it was a passageway. Slowly, without breathing, I knelt down, looking inside. There was something there. I saw a folded blanket, neatly folded, as if someone had left it there. And next to it is another piece of paper. I didn't know which was worse, finding a note or not finding anything. My fingers trembled as I took it. There is a place here. Be quiet. I shuddered. This note looked newer. The ink was dark, as if it had been written recently. I sat up abruptly, my heart pounding. My stomach clenched with realization. Someone lived here. I ran my hand along the walls, found another trace, a thin layer of dirt, as if my fingers had touched it. Someone used this passage. I felt really bad. I quickly looked around. Everything was quiet, but now that silence seemed heavy and tense to me. I abruptly closed the closet door, trying not to make any noise. One thought was spinning in my head. I'm in someone else's house, and I'm not alone here. I returned to the living room, grabbed my laptop, and opened the camera, recording again. I rewound it even further, and then my breathing stopped. On the screen, right behind the back of the sofa, at the very moment when I got up and passed by, something was moving. I rewound it again. Not something. Somebody. Human. I felt an icy fear slide down my spine. I was there. I looked in all the corners. But I didn't notice that at that moment, when I was studying the note in the closet, there was someone behind the sofa. And he was so quiet that I didn't hear a sound that I gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what I had just seen. Human. He was there when I went into the nursery, when I was standing at the closet, when I read the note. But I didn't hear him. I didn't feel it. I pressed pause again, peering at the screen. The figure behind the sofa was barely visible. The man was squatting in the shadows, as if trying to blend in with the background. I rewound the recording to the moment when I returned to the living room. The man disappeared as I slowly raised my head and looked around. Silence. But I knew she didn't mean anything now. I grabbed my phone and started dialing the police number. His finger was trembling over the screen. And then there was a soft sound at the end of the corridor. A click. It was as if a door had slowly closed somewhere in the depths of the house. I froze, listening. Nothing else. But now I had no doubts. Someone is still here. I moved towards the exit, trying not to make a sound. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my palms were sweating. The door handle was cold when I wrapped my fingers around it. The lock was closed. I turned it slowly, very slowly, so as not to make any noise. And at that moment, I heard something fall in the other room. A dull sound like a book or box sliding off a shelf. I took a shuddering breath. I'm not alone anymore. I opened the door and ran outside. Fresh air hit my face, and I inhaled sharply, feeling the blood rushing in my ears. I took a few steps back, grabbed my phone, and quickly dialed number. Hello, police. My voice was shaking. There's someone in the house. I need help. The dispatcher started asking questions, but I barely heard him. I stood in front of the house, staring at the windows. And suddenly it seemed to me that on the second floor, behind the glass of the bedroom, something moved. I didn't check it. I was just waiting for the cops to arrive. I kept my eyes on the window, breathing hard and raggedly. I wanted to believe that it was just a reflection, a trick of the light, that I was imagining things to myself. But something inside told me that wasn't the case. Time dragged on for an excruciatingly long time. I could hear the dispatcher on the other end of the line trying to calm me down, telling me to stay put, but the words reached me through the blood rushing in my ears. And finally, the headlights appeared in the distance. A police car slowly pulled up to the house, and two people got out of it. A man and a woman in uniform, with flashlights. I stepped forward, almost rushed towards them. There's someone in the house, I blurted out, feeling the air cut my parched throat. I heard footsteps. Things were moving. I saw it on the cameras. The officers exchanged glances. Let's take it in order. The woman took a notebook. Are you the only one here? I ran my hand over my face. I have installed the cameras. On the recording, someone was behind the couch, and then he disappeared. The male officer nodded to his partner and took out a walkie-talkie. We'll look around the house. Stay here. I nodded, clenching my fists. The police moved to the door, and the man pulled out a gun. They went inside, and I heard the lock click again. I stood outside, hugging myself, as the minutes dragged by slowly and painfully. The beams of flashlights came on in the house, running through the windows. It must have been 10 minutes. And then they went out. There's no one here, the officer said calmly. The house is empty. I blinked, not understanding. How empty? All the locks are locked. There's no sign of a recent presence other than you. I opened my mouth, then closed it. No, I shook my head. I saw it. I heard. The woman wrote something down in a notebook. The cameras that you have installed. Can you show us the recording? I quickly opened my laptop and scrolled through the video. Here. See. I started a moment where something was moving behind the couch. The police leaned closer. I saw that movement on the screen again. The officer narrowed his eyes. Can I rewind it? I returned the recording for a few seconds. We were all looking at the screen. But now, when I looked at the image, something changed. There was nothing there. There was no movement. Just an empty room. I clutched my laptop, feeling my stomach tighten. No, wait. I saw it. I rewound it again. Empty. I suddenly felt a rush of heat. The recording can be faked, the officer said, closing his notebook. But if you feel threatened, we can check the local surveillance cameras. I stood there, unable to say a word. I didn't fake the recording. I saw it with my own eyes. But now the evidence is gone. The police searched the area once more and then returned to the car. If anything else happens, call me, the man said. I nodded. They're gone. I remained standing, looking at the house. Only the night was reflected in the windows. I understood one thing. If the police did not find anyone inside, it does not mean that there was no one there. I stood in front of the house for a long time, not moving. The night had already completely covered the street, and the silence had become even thicker. Somewhere in the distance, someone's fence creaked, the wind rolled. Everything seemed painfully ordinary, but I knew it couldn't be ordinary. I didn't want to go back inside. Everything in me protested, but I couldn't just leave. My belongings, cameras, and laptop were still in the house. And most importantly, I wanted to understand what the hell was going on here. I slowly went back inside, turned on all the lights, checked the locks. Everything was as the police had left it. There were no footprints, no broken doors, no signs of an intruder. I checked the nursery. He opened the closet. The passage was in place, but the blanket that I saw inside is gone. My chest felt cold. I stood staring into the void where it should have been. Someone took it away. Maybe while the police were searching the other rooms. Maybe earlier, but it meant that someone knew that I had seen him. I carefully closed the closet, went out into the hallway, and sat on the couch. I turned on my laptop. Video. I rewound the recording to the moment when the police left. The footage showed an empty room. I sped up the recording by watching the screen. Everything was calm. About 5 minutes. 10. And then, I noticed movement. Very weak. In the corner of the frame, by the closet. I froze, not blinking. In the video, the closet door slowly opened. 1 centimeter. Then another one. Very smoothly, as if she was being pushed from inside. I couldn't breathe watching. The passage inside the cabinet. I was expecting to see something, someone there. But instead, something else appeared out of the darkness. Not a human being. Arm. A thin, long, dirty hand slowly reached for the door, felt the edge, and then slowly, very slowly, closed the cabinet back. I threw up on the floor. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just sat there, clutching the edge of my laptop, until my knuckles turned white. And then right behind me, there was a soft, barely audible sound. The click of the door handle. I didn't look back. I just rushed away. I ran out into the night, barefoot, not caring about my things, my laptop, or what was left inside. I ran to the end of the street and stopped, panting. There was no light or movement in the windows of the house behind them. I do not know who was inside. I don't want to know, but I'll never go back there again.